We should take less than 10 minutes so that I don't take too much of your time. Yes, so next slide. So we're basically now talking about the positive impact and the roles that peers have on the reproductive health of the youth in general. I tried my best to summarize this because, to be honest, this is a very, very wide topic. So I just hope you get the basics. If you have any more questions, you can ask at the end of the presentation. So we'll start by defining peer education. This is basically the process where a well-trained and motivated young person will undertake informal or organized educational activities with their peers, meaning those who are similar to themselves in age, background, or interests. And a peer is, of course, someone who belongs to the same social group as another person, as another person or group. So the social group, it can be based on age, sex, occupation, socioeconomic or health status, and other factors. Basically, this social group meaning clique. That's the other name. Next slide. So adolescents, in my experience, have always loved to discuss issues and matters important to them, especially related to SRHR with their peers, or at least with someone a bit closer to their age, in a relaxed atmosphere. And peer education is a very effective way of learning different skills to improve young people's sexual and reproductive health outcomes by providing them with the knowledge, the skills, and beliefs that they are required to lead healthy lives, especially in relation to their SRHR. Peer education will always work as long as it's participatory and it involves young people in discussions, activities, and even games to educate and share information and experiences with each other. Meaning, if you're ever carrying out a peer education program, don't make it a boring lecture like what I'm having right now. You know, it's not supposed to be a monologue. You're actually supposed to sit down, like even if you're a bit older than the children or the teens or the young people you're teaching, sit down and be a more casual. Do not be like a teacher. Do not talk down to them. Because when you create a safe space, as I like calling it, they're more willing to open up. And you will realize that these teenagers, especially those in Kenya, oh my goodness, these young people know a lot of things that I never knew I would have to actually say to young people. So it's good to listen to them because in as much as, yes, they know a lot, they've also been misled a lot. Remember the negative impact that peers have? I hope you now know that there's a positive and a negative role. Let's now move on to the next slide. So the major goal, basically, of peer education is equipping or empowering young people with basic but comprehensive, which is detailed, sexual and reproductive health information and skills vital to engage in healthy behaviors. Basically, peer education will give the young person every single thing they need to know about sexual and reproductive health, so that when they have a choice to make, they're not going to make a choice based on what their friends are saying, what society dictates. They will actually make a choice based on what they think is right, which is an informed decision. And of course, in peer education, there are several areas of adolescent and youth reproductive health, like STIs, including HIV and AIDS, life skills, gender, vulnerabilities, and peer counseling. They could all be addressed in peer education, including everything you guys mentioned, like sexual orientation, menstruation, early pregnancies, contraceptives, infertility. Peer education encompasses everything and anything. Although it is mainly aimed at achieving change at an individual level by attempting to modify or change the young person's knowledge, attitudes, beliefs, and behaviors, it can effect change at a group or social level by modifying existing norms and stimulating collective action. What does this mean? This means if I step into a class right now, a high school class, a Form 2 high school class, and I sit and I give them a session on teenage pregnancies or contraceptives, and we sit down and discuss in detail the types of contraceptives, the advantages and disadvantages, it won't just be influencing these girls and boys that you're teaching. These girls and boys, one, they have friends who are not in that class. They'll go and share that information with their friends. They have younger siblings at home. They have even older siblings in very rare occasions, and they'll go and share that information with them. Basically, each and every one of those students will go out into the community and they'll spread that information that you've provided with them. That's what it means by collective action. You're basically impacting that community by teaching those few students or that group of girls. So I hope that makes sense. Next slide. Next slide. Yes, so advantages of peer education. In summary, peer education will help a young person to obtain, of course, clear, detailed, and information about the sensitive issues like sexual behavior, reproductive health, and STIs. Collectively, sexual and reproductive health is basically a taboo. Like everything, even these things that you might find do not have any religious resistance. Even menstrual hygiene, to some extent, it's a taboo subject. Infertility is very much taboo, but you do realize like peer education will always deal and help these young people to get the detailed information so that they're able to debunk the myths and they're able to live and practically make choices based on facts, not based on myths. It also breaks the cultural norms and taboos. And number three, it is combined with training that is user-friendly and offers opportunities to discuss concerns between equals in a relaxed environment. Meaning, if you sit down and provide a safe space, you'll actually find at some point the young people that you are educating will open up about stories in their lives or things that they needed to, tell someone, or, they'll just open up, and it will offer an opportunity where you can discuss serious issues that have been disturbing them for many years. Because of course, those from the African background, we all know how amazing our parents are when it comes to SRH education, including mine, honestly, wow. Anyways, next slide. Number four, peer education training is participatory and rich in activities that are entertaining while providing reliable information. In short, people have fun while sharing facts, and they have fun hearing stories about each other, and it's also an informative experience. So it's a good use of time. Number five, training in peer education will offer the opportunity to ask any questions on all these taboo subjects and discuss them without the fear of being judged and labeled. I hope you remember the thing I said about creating a safe space. That's what basically point five is talking about. Number six, peer education as a youth adult, peer education as a youth adult partnership. Peer education, when well done, is an excellent example of a youth adult partnership. It increases youth participation that can help lead to outcomes such as improved knowledge, attitudes, skills, and behaviors. Basically, once you educate these people, you create a bond with them. So they kind of bond with you and they see you as a big sister or a big brother, and they rely on you, and they just, yes, they'll always come back to you for advice, depending on the situation, of course, and the context. Next slide. So it can always, peer education in general now, we are not in the advantages anymore. It can take place in small groups or through individual contact, like at home with your sister or brother, or in a variety of settings like schools, which is very common, clubs, even religious institutions like churches and mosques, and workplaces, street settings, shelters, or wherever and whenever young people gather. So you will know from your own experience that young people will get a great deal of information from their peers on issues that are sensitive or culturally taboo, and often this information is accurate and can have a very negative impact. This is mostly because, as I said before, taboo subjects are very difficult for our parents' generation. They're not exactly very welcoming and warm towards very many of the taboo subjects. So we end up growing up believing in lies. And yes, peer education makes use of peer influence in a positive way. Because remember what I said, you teach those kids, They'll go out into community and spread that information, and they will make sure that those beliefs and those myths and misconceptions are debunked even in the society. Yes, next slide. So, sorry. So now it's just a peer educator crash course. And this is in regards to all you here and all those listening even in the live stream, because I know at some point you may become a peer educator. And don't worry, it's not like a course you have to do or anything. It's just a few skills you need to build and confidence and the right attitude, and you're there. So you might be asked to give training on peer education to young people. But before you are asked to train peer educators, you're likely to receive a short-term training on how to train young people to be an effective peer educator. So in this study session, you'll just study basic tips that will help you in training adolescents so that you can be a better peer educator. Yes, next slide. So first, young people, like, for example, adults, they have a tendency rather to mask how much they do not know about a subject, especially when it comes to things like sex. I'm so surprised, like the Kenyan youth know so much, so many details, like so many things that even I myself came to learn maybe past 16, 20 there, but young kids nowadays know anything and everything, mostly because of social media. So you need to know that they probably know even more than you, and it's going to disappoint you, and you'll see with time. But you should also not assume that the topic is understood because there are no questions. Especially if you find the audience is not asking questions, it's either they're too scared to ask among their friends, or it is something they really don't want anyone else to know. So it's also important to welcome people to ask you questions in person or privately if they would prefer so. Secondly, young people and adults learn better when they are neither criticized nor judged by the facilitator. I'll keep repeating this. Always create a safe space. And it's important to always keep a positive attitude, have a positive energy, and just a warm environment. Create an environment where someone doesn't feel like if they open up, they're going to be beaten, or they'll be taken to the elders to be beaten with sticks and slippers. So just be warm. And young people will always learn better when there is an atmosphere of support, trust, and understanding. Onwards to the next slide. So these are basic tips that are also useful to the young people when you're now trained to be a peer educator. And they will also just want to know whether they should organize some activities or just be available to talk to peers at school, at work, or in a bar. In short, always provide another way that they can communicate to you even after the session, especially in group sessions of peer education. Next slide. So after, of course, undertaking the trainer, a good peer educator should have the ability to help young people identify their concerns and seek solutions through sharing of information and experience. Number two, they should inspire young people to adopt health-seeking behaviors by sharing common experiences, weaknesses, and strengths. They should also become role models, and they should demonstrate behaviors that promote risk reduction within their community, in addition to informing others about those risk reduction practices. Number four, they should understand and relate to the emotions, feelings, and thoughts and language of young people. Next slide, and I think that should be the fifth and last. So yeah, examples of youth peer education activities. You can always organize sessions in secondary school, like you ask for a free period or a time when they don't have lessons, or you organize with the administration, where now the peer educators will use interactive techniques like role plays, stories, and theater plays in a youth club, then group discussions concerning issues. They don't have to be exactly professional, but you can try and create a situation where the young people will role play or will act it out, and then now thereafter you can discuss as a group, basically based on real life experiences. Next slide. So, and peer educators are also expected to use informal conversations with friends where they may talk about different types of behavior that could put their health at risk and where they can find more information and practical help. In short, don't let it be a lecture like this one. Be more casual, be more friendly, and be more approachable. Next. Yes, so we finally reached the end of my summarized version of the role of peers, in youth reproductive health. So does anyone have any questions here and in the live stream? Yes, and please don't ask me hard questions. I'm also very young. I do not know much, but I'll try and help as best as I can. Yes. So any questions? Or maybe did I lose everybody in the process? That's very possible.
No,
Hi, Barbara. You didn't lose us. We are just internalizing all these information and everything. And actually, after listening to everything, it like you get to have more understanding on what's happening around us, and even have a look at how it was during our days, like those of us who went to schools in the rural areas. So there's so much that people don't want to talk about here, but some of us can talk about them. So let's just give them a little bit of time. And actually, we'd like to hear from a teacher perspective, someone who talks with the younger ones mostly, because we deal with primary school teenagers. Yeah, they're still naive about these topics, and even the teachers don't like discuss them into depth. So yeah.
Okay, thank you so much.
Do we have any comments, any question? You can ask for a friend. If you don't want it to come from you directly, you can say asking for a friend, like the way we do.
Hello, how are you? My name is Jacqueline.
Yes, Jacqueline, go ahead.
Yes. We have a girls mentorship program that I have been running for some time now. It's actually 4 years now. And one is to applaud you for taking the courage and getting this online. Trust you me, if this was traditional media, sidhani if we would have been able to attend. So thank you for this webinar. And I'm grateful to see that maybe most of you may be younger than me, but you are taking this now upon yourselves, which for me is very impressive. What I will say, maybe to add on to what our speaker was talking about, is just to do a bit of research, because I have done both secondary schools in schools and also off school, courtesy of COVID. When schools closed, we kind of, all of us had to figure out a way to reach out to this youth. So we did off school meetings and cell groups, which also saw me have maybe people or youngsters who are not necessarily high school going. But one thing I will say has really helped me is doing a bit of research on the high school or the area that you identify, so that you are able to understand the demographic that you are dealing with. So some of the people, I will touch out on a few of the institutions that have helped me to understand my demographic better. One would be the children's department, where we will get a close look on the situations that is happening in your area, so that you are able to understand the demographic. Also, what we call the national government administration officers, and famously known as the chiefs. being at one of the ranks. So you would want to have a look and talk to them and ask them like what are the challenges they're facing with the youngsters as well. Then create like a table of the challenges and the vices that they engage in. And of course now the Nyumba Kumi leadership, which is more like community policing groups that will help you to figure out your demographic, and as well as the teachers. So that's some of the few places that I get to know and understand the demographic very well. Another thing is I advise to make a point to visit maybe the children's court. You get to hear some of the hearings and get to understand what are some of the problems that the society may be facing. Because truth be told, as you've said, these children will not talk to you. These teenagers at some point will not talk to you. You have to kind of figure out as you start off. But as you go on, they open up to you when you create that safe space and they feel, yeah, we have a safe space. During the sessions, maybe you might want to introduce a blank piece of paper with all matching ball pens or pencils where people can write their questions and they can just dump them in the suggestion box, and you can read the questions one by one so that they don't get to know who asked what or who was asking what. So that's another way that I look at it. I guess that's one way to do it. That's how I've been doing it for some time now, and it works. Of course, since I've worked with them for some years, they've been able to open up on some of these things and they've been able to come up and pinpoint. But as you start off as a peer educator, you also need to be very careful on how you handle them, because how you handle them might determine whether they will react or they will just retract from what you are teaching. But I'm really glad I've also learned a lot tonight, and yeah, I look forward to more of this. Thank you.
Thank you, Jacqueline. Also, something I would have wanted to say, although, me, I'm young, so I don't really have much experience, but it's, SRHR is so wide. Like, you find it is so wide. You cannot possibly come for like a whole 3 hours and cover every single focus area. Because even me listing down the focus areas would just take me 30 minutes. So that's how much SRHR is wide. Usually, if you're targeting some place, something that I believe Cheryl is well aware of in a project I used to be in called Project Respect, doing a pre-visit, like before the actual visit where you go to now the children and teach, is very helpful because it helps you see their environment. You can get to talk to the supervisors. I found it's a bit useful, but sometimes even having the opportunity to talk to the girls themselves in that visit might give you a clearer picture, because at some point the teachers may not know as well like the specific problems, because there are of course problems that they hide because of the institution rules and guidelines. So talking to the girls and boys about what really troubles them in regards to SRHR and just visiting to see and familiarize with the environment is very, very useful. Yes, I can't say I've done it long, but at least I know it's good to pre-visit so that you know what SRHR topics am I going to talk about? What is disturbing? Is it pregnancies? Is it FGM? Is it period poverty? Like, what is it? Yes. So I think I'm done. If nobody has questions, that could mean you guys are okay, like you've understood everything or nothing, but I know that you've all picked something, even if it was one sentence. And yes. Any other questions or comments?
I have a question.
Yes.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you for the wonderful presentation. I really learned a lot. And I was just wondering if maybe you could give some examples of peer leadership that can bring out more healthy attitudes towards sexual health. Maybe if you have some success stories that can help in this.
Okay, please repeat. I think you are breaking, or I couldn't hear you. Like I didn't quite question. Yes.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes, I can.
Okay, I was just wondering if maybe you could give some examples of the peer leadership that brings out more healthy attitudes towards sexual health, or maybe anyone who has a success story that could share with us. I think maybe you could learn one or two things from that.
Okay, I think I'll just give an example. In my experience in Scora, well, there's this shelter that we support as best as we can, of course, because we are very poor students. It's a shelter in Kibera. Basically it's a shelter for needy mothers who basically got pregnant through rape or, very ugly, I would say, like the stories are quite ugly and they're quite messy. But the reason that shelter was founded by some Italians was to shelter those who still decided to keep their babies with them, despite the ugly history of being raped, gang raped, or something. And it's somewhere in the middle of Kibera slums. So initially, when I would say I've known, or rather we've been working in secret because Cheryl does not know about this for the last 2 years. And there are some people who've had some success stories, like after we started coming to them. Like, for example, the first time we went, we just did a general maternal health, like we just generalized maternal health with the little medicine we have. We did basics on breastfeeding and how to keep your baby healthy, the foods you need to eat, and that's it. And as we continued going on, like for the mothers, they opened up that they needed more information on how to prevent GBV or how to protect their friends. Because of course, some of them, it had already happened to them. They were pregnant. Of course, they didn't have the resources to go to the police, present, and go to the hospital to get post-rape care. So yes, they bore the seed of a rapist, which was really tough. So as we continued going on with these mothers, because we always follow up, every 3 months I follow up via email. I always call the supervisor. She kept saying that those mothers that we initially helped have been very formidable in the community. They even founded their own, I would say, chama outside now the home, of course, because they eventually left the shelter. And they now help out all girls and women that happen to suffer the same fate. And of course, they work in collaboration with this lady who owns this shelter. And we as Scora, or rather, yes, me and the Scora family, we try our best to give them donations. Like we give them baby food, baby clothes. We give them everything they need, even old clothes from our own siblings, our cousins, relatives. We always send them to that home. And we also go and visit them and we educate the mothers who are admitted to the shelter and we encourage them. It's helped those people grow. And I think it's sort of a success story in one way or another, because the initial mothers we educated and supported eventually went and now they help the community and they help spread awareness and we're in contact. So I think that's more or less one success story. I do hope that's what you are asking, like an example of a success story. Yes?
Yes, absolutely. Yes. Thank you.
Yes. So yeah, that's it in a nutshell for me. Anyone else? I think Rehema has raised her hand. And Jacqueline. Okay, so.
Sorry, that was for earlier. My apology.
Okay. And Rehema, is it an accident you raised your hand? Okay. I'm not quite sure what's going on. Rehema, can you hear us? Okay.